All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Marie Fielding, and I'm here at the Appleton Museum of Art in Ocala, Florida. And I'm glad that you've joined us today. Before we start, I want to go through quickly a PowerPoint, step by step. And this PowerPoint will be sent to you. So then you can refer to it. You want to do another one? So very quickly, yes, we are doing white birch trees. And I'm hoping that, some of you have actually looked up birch trees so you can see really what they look like. This is one of the paintings that I had done as an example. And so yours will look like this, or maybe even better. You've got all your materials, your white paint, black paint, red, orange if you're going to paint a bird, your paint brushes, chalk, marker. So you've got all of that collected. Hopefully you have painted the background. And if you haven't, if you need to do it, you can still do that. And then just get out your hairdryer and quickly dry it. Because it is going to be easier to paint on a canvas that has already been painted and is dry. You are going to sketch out a plan very quickly and decide how many trees you want, where you want them. You're going to do that with chalk, which is great because if you need to change it, you just wipe it off and you change it. So that's really good. And we will pause during this painting to give you time to work on things and if you have questions, okay? When you've drawn everything in, you're going to paint with your black and white and gray. It's really a very simple painting. There's not much that you use other than the white and the black and your gray, a couple of different paintbrushes. You'll blend things together to give that roundness of a tree. Add some branches. Actually, and birch trees don't have a lot of branches, to be very honest with you. And they're very, very thin. So you're not going to end up putting a lot of branches on your birch tree. And then you're going to add the details, the black details, which is what makes the birch tree a birch tree. And it's very different. The bark is different. It's the roundness. Your lines are going to go from side to side rather than vertical like a regular, like a maple tree or an oak tree. And we'll pause. If some of you want to add a cardinal in there, I'll go through how to draw a cardinal step by step. It's very, very easy. You're going to be drawing and painting very small. So I don't think you'll find it very difficult to add a little bird in there if you choose to. Okay, so put all of this together and we can get started. Okay, so you've got your canvas, okay, you've got your brushes, and actually I'm going to put this aside just for now, and you want to plan your trees, okay? With your white chalk, I'll just move this. With your white chalk, you're going to decide how many trees that you want. Do you want a larger focal tree? Do you want all of them to be roughly the same size? I'm going to draw one a little bit larger than the others. And this might be the one if I decide to put a bird on, I could put a branch on here. Don't worry about them being really straight. Birch trees are not straight, so please don't use a ruler. They are not straight. They have character. They're kind of wiggly and wobbly, and they split in different directions sometimes. I think I'll draw another one over here, and maybe another one here. Now the thing is, this is probably going to change when you start putting it onto your canvas anyway. And that's the nice thing about this, because you can easily change this if you don't like it. Because It just washes right off, really easy. Besides these focal trees, you're going to add some in the background, and I'm not going to draw those right now, but you will add those later, almost like a shadow in the background. But these would be your focal points. These are the trees that you're going to work on, really, okay? If you like this, then you're going to go to your canvas, and you're going to put those on there now, okay? So I'm going to show you, I don't like to draw a tree right in the middle. I tend to draw things offset. So I'm going to put my biggest tree right here. And maybe I'll draw another one right here. I might put another one here, but yes, I'm going to put another one here. And this one is actually too straight for me. So I have a little sponge, but you can use a paper towel. And if you don't like that, just take that out. Okay. I'm just going to wipe that off. Don't worry about the chalk lines if they still show as you're painting, because when your painting is completely dry, you can wipe any extra chalk lines off. Okay. And I'm going to redraw this birch tree. I kind of like that a little bit better. It's not as straight. I'm going to take that out too. And I'm going to put this in. I might just put another little one, real skinny one in here. So I have 5. Nope. So as I'm doing this, why don't you draw your trees onto your canvas? Okay, and if anybody has any questions, now is the time, just about to ask. I can draw one right off the edge there. If you have a pencil, you can draw with a pencil, but you've got to draw very, very lightly because you can't erase a pencil. Trying to think what else you might have at home. You can use the paint, and actually when you know what, if you don't have the chalk, you're going to use the paint right away, and actually you can still wipe that off. In fact, I'll show you right now. If you did, and I'm going to hold my flat brush on its side so it gives me a thinner line. So if I just very lightly did that line, if I don't like that, I can basically take that out. And then wipe that down. So if you don't have chalk, you can paint directly on your canvas. And then if you don't like it, you can immediately, but you'd have to immediately wipe it off. Okay. I'm just going to go back and draw that on here. Let's see. And you don't want to add too much water. If you are wiping something off, just be careful you don't have too much water on there. Okay. Anybody else? Any kind of chalk. The problem with colored pencil is you've got to be able to make sure you can cover it with the paint. If you're going to use a colored pencil, yeah, that's the only thing depending on what color, I would draw the darker side of your tree first. Don't draw the lighter side because there's a chance that the white won't cover that colored pencil line. The black and the gray will cover that pencil line, but the white may not. So just draw in the darker side, one side of your tree, which would be the darker side. Right, birch trees are not straight. They're really fairly interesting. My backyard up in New England was full of birch trees, and they're just really beautiful trees. So I'm going to start pouring out some paint, and I'm going to give myself that white. And some black. And actually, this is the one I'm going to mix a gray. Just basically want a medium gray. That might be a little too dark for me. You can always darken it. I don't want too much paint on my brush. I am going to do one tree at a time here. So I'm going to start with my largest tree. And basically, I'm just going to drag this paint down. And if it doesn't go exactly on my chalk line, I'm not really concerned. I can wipe that off later. This is a flat brush. I love a flat brush because you can drag it and get that thick line, but you can also get a very thin line. So I'm just going to paint one side of this, and then I'm going to take another flat brush, and I'm going to do the light side of my tree. This is where you're going to end up holding probably a couple of different brushes. You want to have, now you want to have a dry brush, because you actually, well, I'm going to paint a little more white in here. Want to start blending these together. So I'm going to add more white, bring it into where the gray is, kind of overlap that a little bit. And with your dry brush, and keep wiping, whoops, wrong one. Keep wiping that. What you want to do now is start blending these together. You want that white to blend into the gray. And as you can see, you're going to keep going back and adding more paint in here until you get it. And you may end up adding more gray in here. And then using that dry brush to blend those two together. Now, a little more white in here. You want to have it appear that there is definitely a light side. I still don't like this one up here. And a dark side. And I have one for my gray, one for my white, and a dry brush that I use for blending those two together until I get that effect that I want. That looks like my tree is rounded a little bit. I might put a little bit more here, kind of blend that together too. Yeah. Yeah, so you want something that looks like it's got some shading to it, a whiter side and a darker side to it. So if you need to go ahead and do all your trees now, take your time and just start painting those in, I'm going to use the side of my brush on this one because this is a very skinny tree. And I'll paint that in and then start adding my white. Oops, too much. My white is basically going to run right into this. If you need to, just wipe some of that off and get your white back. Okay. Then, again, my dry brush. Kind of blend these. My tree is going to get a little bit fatter here. Keep wiping that paint off. How's everybody doing? The nice thing about this is that you don't need to paint a straight line. Perfect. Let's see. A little more white on this one. Okay. You can always go back later and really highlight that lighter side with a small round brush, which we can do because yes, there is supposed to be white birch, not necessarily gray birch, white birch. Did in New Hampshire, well, actually even in Massachusetts, but my home in New Hampshire, my backyard was loaded with white birch trees. They're beautiful all year long. That's the nice part about them. They're beautiful trees. You're going to end up using a lot of white. Just keep going back. Like I said, we can go back after this dries a little bit too, and really add more white to highlight that white birch. One tree at a time is better because sometimes this paint, depending on what kind of paint and how thick you're using it, it tends to dry a little bit. And yeah, so for the blending, it's better to do one tree at a time. And I don't like that little line there. So I actually can take my little sponge and I'm going to take some of that out. Yeah, that's a kitchen sponge that I cut up. That's what happens when the sponges get really awful looking. You use them for paint. There we go. And let's just do this one here, this little one. keep adding more paint as you need to make it, to get that blending the way you want it to look. You can keep going back and forth and have much more paint added. Yeah, I've done a couple of these now and keep changing them a little bit. As you can, you probably can't see all that. I can still see my chalk lines. And if you still see your chalk lines, don't worry about it. You just want your trees to look the way you want them. The chalk lines will erase. So you do not have to cover those chalk lines if you've decided that you don't really like them. I am going to go back and put these, and I'm going to add a little more white along the edges of some of these. I've taken a round brush and I want these to look a little more white. So I'm going to go down that side, that lighter side. And almost highlight my tree again. Anytime I add a white, I still do like to use my dry brush just to make sure it is blended a little bit. Actually, and I'm going to keep going back over this gray because I do want more of this tree to be white. And since some of this, it has been blended, but some of it has dried, I can just keep adding more white to this to make this look more like a birch tree. This is not anything really, this is not like an expensive artist acrylics like we use here, you know, at the Appleton for our painting classes. This is a craft paint that you can buy. Regular, like studio grade paint is going to be much thicker. And it would be beautiful if you wanted to make these have really a lot of texture to them. You could add, I mean, you could use that type of paint. Yeah, I'm going to add a little bit of water to this too. I just want to thin this white out a little bit and make this a little bit easier to spread. And I've got to put some white on this, more white on this tree. Okay. I'm going to remind you again, don't just get distracted because I can still see my chalk lines, and just don't get distracted by those. They will disappear. Okay. I'm just blending my my birch trees, and if you think they're too gray, which I'm looking at some of mine, I'm thinking they're too gray for me right now. I'm going to go back and add a little more white, little at a time, just up and down until I get that the way I want it. The other thing I am going to recommend, I don't know if you're seated or if you're standing and you've got an easel or whatever, is take a step back and look at it. In other words, just, you know, sometimes when you're working so close, you don't get a really good view. Pick it up, move it back, take a step back, whatever. One thing that I forgot to mention is the bottom of your canvas, and I didn't do this myself, is make sure, you know, your trees, and I have to come back here. so your canvas will look more finished. And it would be just the same at the top. I tend to forget about the bottom and the top of the canvas, you know, just, and I'm just going to add this. And I'm not so concerned with this one right now because this is like my fourth painting. So I'm just, yeah, just to remind you, don't forget that, you know, let's see. I'm going to rinse these out. I'm just going to talk a little bit about branches. Branches on birch trees are they're small, they're skinny, sometimes they almost look like twigs, to be very honest with you. And you don't have a lot, okay? Sometimes you'll see them, and I'm going to use a black pencil right now. Sometimes you'll see this beautiful white tree and there will be this black twig. That's what it looks like, especially in the wintertime. That's what you're going to see. So when you're painting these, you know, you're just going to make these little lines, and I wouldn't do a lot of them, to be honest with you, okay? But I skipped one little thing here. If you've got your main trees done, you want to put some in the background, like a shadow in the background, and we'll do that before we do the branches. And this is where I would use a round brush. You can use a flat brush, and I'll do some with both. And I'm going to use this gray here. Yep. Let's mix up some more. I'm using plexiglass for my palette, and it does tend to dry up pretty quickly on here. So I'm going to mix this up. A very pale, you don't want anything really too dark because you don't want to overpower your focal trees. So I'm going to wipe some of that out here. With a flat brush, if you hold it straight up and down, you can just very slowly make some trees in the background. If that is not dark enough, which I think I may darken that up a little bit. You can use a, excuse me, a round brush. Even with a round brush, you want to hold it almost straight up and down because you're just making, if you run out of paint, that's the thing with a round brush. You just want the highlight, or not really highlight, excuse me, but the idea that there is maybe some trees in the background. And this is the problem with a round brush. You tend to run out of paint. They don't have to go to the top of the page. I actually like a flat brush better. I'm just going to put a couple of little ones in here. You want to give the illusion that there are things in the background. There's more to this forest than, you know, the few trees that you've got. This one's a little too wiggly for me. This one. See, I tend to use a flat brush. I love a flat brush for almost everything. Okay. Like I said, don't add too many. Okay. if you have chalk, and you want to maybe sketch in where you might want your branches. Okay. Again, if you don't like that, see, you can still take that out right now. So if you're planning on doing a bird in here, then you do want to have a good sized branch. And, you know, again, overlap, you know, I can put that in here. They tend to just be straight. And I'm not going to overdo this because I don't want a whole lot of branches. Birch trees don't have a lot of branches. So, and again, they're skinny. There isn't. And that's why I was kind of hoping that people had looked online at actual pictures, because most pictures that you see, you're not going to see a lot of branches on white birch trees, especially in the wintertime. They look like black sticks. And we're painting these trees. You're not seeing the tops of the trees, and you're not seeing the bottoms of the trees. So mostly you're seeing where you're going to see the bark on the tree. You're not going to see a lot of branches because they're going to tend to be more at the top where you would have leaves. So there's not much here. So I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of gray. My branches are going to be darker. I'm going to mix up almost a black. And I don't want a lot of paint. As you can see, I'm wiping most of this out. And if you have a collection of brushes, you can just grab a clean brush, use one to mix up your paint, and then another one. I do have a lot of branches in this one. And as you can see, I've used gray, and then I've gone back with black on them, which I will do. All right, so I'm going to add, I'm going to hold this paintbrush almost straight up and down. And I just want to add a tiny little line in here. If the paint is not flowing like you want it to, add a tiny, tiny bit of water. And this is really totally random, to be honest with you, where you add branches and how much. I really am not going to add much more to this. In fact, I'm not going to add anything to this. But what I am going to do is with some pure white, I am going to go back. I'm going to put some thickness to this branch. Have it just kind of blend into my tree. I like to highlight my branches. You could actually say, if you wanted to, that this is the snow on the tops of the branches, because when it does snow, it's like frosting. It's beautiful. The snow just kind of sits on top. Like I said, it's like frosting. And it's so quiet that it's beautiful. to this one. If you're finding you want to put a little more white with your round brush, go back and just go along the edge and really highlight your tree. I do want to go back around on this one. Put some here. Let's go back over this one. I am going to use a little bit of black on the sides of my tree, just a little bit. Again, holding the paintbrush straight up and down. Now, yes, you're not going to see this on a real birch tree. You're not going to see black along the edge, but I just like to bring a little, maybe, I guess, a little drama to my tree and add, and I'm not going to do it all along the entire side of every tree. Just a little bit here and there, because we are going to go back and add black for the bark on this tree. So it's not really that you're outlining, but maybe take some areas that you want to highlight and put a little black in there. Hold your paintbrush basically straight up and down. This tree. And if it blobs a little bit, don't worry about it. You're going to put blobs of black on there anyway for the bark, for the details in the bark. And that you will use a flat brush for also. This I smudged earlier, so I am definitely going to go over this and kind of outline that tree a little bit. And that's about all I think I will do as far as outlining in black. I guess, yeah. Maybe a little bit down here. Okay. The black on your birch trees, again, because it goes side to side, use your flat brush. You don't want a lot of paint, and you just kind of want to dab it on. I tend to use more of the tip of the brush and just kind of, doesn't look that great on the paper. You don't want to just make a big, you don't want to drag your brush. You more want to just kind of dab it on using more of the end of the brush. If you want it thinner, obviously, use the side of the brush or like the corner of the brush. Okay, so when you're putting your black areas, and again, it's going to be kind of up to you. I'm going to start up here, and I'm just going to put a couple. I might want to use, again, like the corner of my brush in here and put. And you can put some large areas. Now, again, we are going to go back, and I'm going to do this right now on this particular tree. Birch trees, when you look really close at them, besides these large areas, they are going to have all of these tiny, and I don't know if you can see, but they have all of these tiny little black lines going from side to side. And this is where you're using your Sharpie, an ultra fine, extra fine Sharpie, and they're just tiny little black lines. This is what's going to finish off your tree. They're not very big. You can leave some areas, completely white. Absolutely, because I mean, this, when you, with your Sharpie, your paint absolutely needs to be dry. So this can be added anytime. I did it now. I just wanted to show you that you don't want to add too many of these large black areas, because you are going to go back and put in some of those other blacks, the tiny, tiny black lines. So right now, I think I've got enough on here. I'm going to put some, and since my skinny trees, I have to be careful here. This is what makes a birch tree a birch tree. The areas of black that you see, and it could be right over on the edge, a little bit in the middle. And like I said, you can have large areas of black on here. Oh, I need a little bit more on here. I'm just going to put, and it's a totally random. They could be coming from around the one side of from the back of the tree. They can be smack in the middle of the tree. They can be, yeah, just put a little bit, bring that down a little bit. Again, don't overdo it. I'm going to make some more in here though. You can have some really dark and some lighter. So as you put your paint on, as it starts to come off your brush, and you have just a little on your brush, then you can do some lighter areas. For your skinnier trees, just turn your paint, your brush on its side. This is what's going to give your trees their character. Actually, right now, I think that's all I want in here, maybe. Yeah, I think that's all I want right now. And what I would do then is use my my fine point. But I am going to take out some of I still have chalk lines. So I am going to get rid of my chalk lines because I can still see a whole bunch of them here. Take this one. If this was, okay, this is my branch, okay, a cardinal, and usually I would do this. I want the bird to be sitting. So this is going to be the front of the bird right here. Okay, the bird, I'm not going to bother with the feet. That curve would be sitting on the branch, and you're going to have part of a tail. The back of the bird, again, this can be a straight line, and there would be more of a tail here. Straight line for the back of the bird. You can put a curve in here for the wing. And I might bring it out a little bit. Okay. To show you that that curve is going to sit on the branch. Okay. Enough space to put the beak. I'm going to put a slanted line here. And there's my beak in here. This is because you're going to be painting so tiny. You just want to simplify this. This up here, that you know, the top of the cardinal's head, and you just a little bit of a curve here. Yeah, actually, yes. And this, you know, would be, there was be some black here. So if I'm going to paint, even this right here is too big for my painting. So just a little, that's this little triangle. So this would be the beak and just a little bit of a slanted line. Okay. Curve for the back of the head, just a little bit of a curve. And I know this looks a little bit of a curve. This is the beak right here. Out at the end of the beak, this is where I'm going to make that curve down to the branch. And a straight line down. And I'm actually going to come down on the other side of it, because this would be part of that tail. And a curve. That's about all you need. Okay. Of course, that beak would be orange. And that's about all you're going to need. If you have a tiny piece of chalk, you can try and draw it in, but it is hard to draw with chalk, you know, something so small like that. Okay. I can put one in on here. Get myself a little bit of orange beak. Whoops. Okay. I can do a whole flock. Okay. The red paint is much, as you can see, is much thicker. So I will add a little bit of water to that to make it easier to spread. And I'm just going to take a little bit of that and make a little puddle here. A little bit of water and loosen that up. Okay, so that's my, let's take a little bit of orange here for that beak. Okay, if this is, I'm going to put my, basically by the time I finish touching this, ooh, that orange is not very good. That's all I need. And this is really thin. So honestly, very watery. Okay. So there's my straight line for the head. The beak is hard to see right now. I probably will end up going over this a couple of times. And I'm going to have to go over some of this. Yeah, and actually even go over the branch. Okay. Let's take, if I can define where a little bit for the black, for the, on the top of the beak. And then I'm just dabbing this to come down, you know, underneath that tiny bit underneath the beak, that black area. I need to let that red dry. You're going to have to go over, because the background is so dark, you'll have to go over that red several different times. And I want to fix that branch. Okay, now you can see the red a little bit better because this is the second coat. Somehow, I'm not sure, but the beak is, because that orange was too liquidy, he's really got a very large beak, and let's see what we can do about that. I actually might mix some red. Let's see if I can make that thicker. Let's see if I can fix this. I actually might have to go back myself and make this the beak with some type of a paint pen, because this orange paint that I've got is just not working very well. And you're working so tiny. And some of the detail on the bird you might want to, when it's dry, is actually go back with a Sharpie and draw in just to define where the wing is. He's got way too much of a tail right now too. And I don't think I can get that out of there. I'm still finding traces of chalk in here. There. A little more gray on that one too. So we can do a little more blending. I'll wait for that to dry. In the meantime, let's touch up some of those branches. Okay, how are we doing? Okay, I hope this works for you, and I would encourage you to try it again. You know, try a different background, add a lot more trees, and I hope you join us for one of our other Art 101s here at the Appleton Museum in Ocala, Florida.